Good morning, all. This is John Kogan. I'm the CEO of Performative, a longtime CFO, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this morning, Best Practices in Budgeting and Planning. According to a number of recent studies, budgeting and planning are at or near the top of the list of concerns for many CFOs and other finance and accounting professionals. The process takes too long, it's not accurate enough, the tools available seem to make for more work, not less, and so on. What this process needs is a significant rethinking and re-execution to make it better, faster, and more accurate and accountable to the folks using it and relying on it. You'll learn about current best practices in budgeting and planning and how to impact the people, processes, and technology behind building a world-class budgeting and planning capability this morning. This knowledge will be brought to you by experienced experts on the subject who deal with budgeting and planning for a living, with folks just like you and for their own companies. I would like to thank Host Analytics, a firm created by corporate finance executives particularly to make the budgeting and planning process easier and more meaningful for us all, for helping us make this event possible. Like everything we do at Performative, this event is free of charge to the users. We appreciate your coming today and giving us your valuable time, and we're happy that with Host Analytics we can do this at no cost to you. A brief note on today's agenda. First, we will hear short presentations from two speakers. And then we will move to a panel discussion where we will spend the remainder of our hour. We would love for this to be an interactive experience for you, so if you have any questions at any time, please go to the questions area in your GoToWebinar control panel and send us your questions. We can't promise to get all of them in, but we'll do our best, and we will also follow up afterwards on any questions we did not get to. We will send out a link to this presentation to all attendees, so we will post the soft copies on our site. They'll be available for free on the site. They will be posted shortly after the event, and we will send out an email with a link to that, or you can simply come onto the site and grab it. Usually that's up and out on the site within an hour after the presentation. We are also offering CPE credits for the CPAs in the audience today. If most folks probably signed up for CPE credit while you were registering for the event. If you neglected to do that, please contact Tanya Walsh. Her email address is twalsh@proformative.com, and you'll see in the little chat box, also in your control panel, that I have put her email address. So if you have any questions at all about CPE credits, please address them to Tanya Walsh at twalsh, W-A-L-S-H, @proformative.com. So a quick word about Performative for those who are new to what we do here. Performative is the largest and fastest growing online resourcing community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. We touch over 400,000 of us. I'm a longtime finance and accounting person myself. So every month, almost 500,000 of us are connected via Performative, both online and off. We have no fun on Performative.com. It's all about reaching out to your peers, asking questions, getting work done, and learning. That's what Performative is about. It's all completely free. It's completely ad-free and noise-free, so there's no banner ads on the site, etc. It's just a great resource if you have questions about your job on a day-to-day basis. So please feel free to check us out at Performative.com. Today, we, of course, would like to tell you about budgeting, planning, and how to improve your budgeting and planning processes at your companies. This is a practice that takes up a significant amount of time for both the finance and accounting organizations at every level. And it hits us not only at the beginning of our fiscal year, which a lot of folks are preparing for right now, but also on a monthly and quarterly basis. And it takes an awful lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of humans, a lot of technology. And it's something that I think all of us feel can be done more effectively and better. And that's what we're here to share with you today. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and have us jump into our first presentation today, and that's going to be presented to us by Carrie Brook, VP of Product Marketing at Host Analytics. Carrie currently manages Host Analytics product marketing activities. Previously, she managed the highly successful release and launch of the Hyperion Planning suite and subsequently ran product marketing for all of Hyperion's packaged applications. Most recently, Carrie was with Oracle, where she led the product management team responsible for all of the Oracle EPM planning products. Prior to working in the high-tech industry, Carrie held positions in finance and IT for large organizations such as Ciba-Geigy and Unilever. Carrie is a chartered UK accountant. Carrie, please take us away.
Thanks very much, John. So what I'm going to do now is just sort of take it up a bit of a level and look at what we've seen as some of the best practices in budgeting and planning that can make your organization much more agile and much more focused on future trends and anticipating trends rather than just reacting to them. And also how to, in that way, change your particular role in the organization as well. So, you know, we see this role of finance really evolving over time. You know, it's moved from really just people who are reporting on the financial results of the organization. The data that they have to work with is very rigid, they're very reactive, and they just don't have the time or the resources to really become what we see as much more of a business partner in the organization. And in order to do that, the data that you require needs to be much more flexible, much more real time, and in that way you can become much more proactive. Now, technology is not the only thing that's going to help you with this, but it can be a key enabler in getting your role to be elevated to such a state. You know, I wouldn't be an ex-practitioner and also a software vendor if I didn't have my I hate spreadsheet slide. So this is the obligatory slide here. I think Dave actually went through most of these in detail when he talked about sort of his before picture. And, you know, lack of control, lack of accuracy, many data quality issues, disconnected people, processes, and systems, reporting takes too long. And I think the last one is probably the most important here is the lack of accountability for the results. So it's not just the finance person who owns the profit number of the organization, but unfortunately, if a budget takes, you know, 5 months put together and only one iteration within those 5 months, nobody else really buys into that plan. And so if people don't buy into the plan, they don't feel accountable for the numbers, then it all rests on finance and it becomes the finance plan, which is no use to anyone. And I often like to think about when the role of finance changes, it really changes a finance person from manager to a leader. And when we think about what managers think about, right, we think about people, so we control that through hiring and supervision. We think about processes, right, who hasn't been through a business process reengineering project at some point during the last 5 years? I know I have. And then technology very often, even with finance, is delegated to IT, mainly because the alternatives to spreadsheets have really grown so much in terms of the complexity of what the implementation looks like that very often it's now the remit of IT to put in business systems rather than the functional heads themselves. And what I would argue is that instead of being a manager and thinking about those three things separately, I would argue that leaders and finance people who have these evolved roles have really moved to looking at these people, processes, and technology as a complete entity. So how have they done that in our experience of working with our customers, and my experience, you know, sort of working in what I like to see as a proper job? Well, there's really 9 steps to creating an agile organization and to putting into practice the best practices. So the first is just very simply to systemize the process, right? And you cannot use Excel to systemize that process. It's just impossible. You need to implement a system, you know, by yourself with your requirements in mind that specifically deals with business planning and your particular business. And in that way, very simply, it frees up the time, right? That's when, by systemizing, that's where you really see the biggest jump up in process efficiencies being created. The second area, and this is actually what Dave talked about as well in his presentation, make sure that you have a complete and consistent view of the future of your business. So make sure that you're not just thinking about a fiscal year. The world's going to end at the end of December, and that's the only point that I'm going to look at as far as my budget or my reforecasting process is concerned. Dave talked about going from 4-quarter rolling forecast, I think, to 6 quarters. We've seen, the same here. So we've got 12 to 18 months. I've even seen people go up to 2 years. I wouldn't recommend longer than that, because then you probably want to start going to a much more top-down, long-range plan at that point. What's vitally important in creating rolling forecasts is that you have a tight integration to your ERP system. And the reason for this is that the rolling forecast is effectively pushed forward by loading actuals into the system, and that's where the integration becomes key. The next area is what we call at Host Analytics is initiatives planning. Some people look at this as well as akin to project planning. And we all think about, running our business, right? So what are the core financials? What are the fundamentals of running my business? And then when we look at our budgets or our rolling forecasts, we look at growing our business, right? And those two elements are often created in the core plan, if you like. What we also see customers who, again, take on a new role in the organization is really look at, well, how do I transform my business? And very often, folks don't want to include that in the regular planning process. They actually want to see, okay, what happens when I run and grow my business? But then these special initiatives or these projects, what happens if I introduce these projects into that run and grow plan? And it's really kind of looking at this separate world of, it may be, moving international. It may be signing up a new channel partnership. It's these things that you can easily plug into the overall plan and see how that affects the overall profitability. And the best thing about that is you can then choose the most profitable initiative to put it, because with scarce resources you can't do all your projects. So then you can see which one has the most positive effect on your plan. The next item is around linking strategy and execution. We all try and put our brains not just on the tactics of our day-to-day jobs, but to really look at how our tactics are being affected by and also affecting our overall strategic plan. And by aligning that tactical forecasting process to your strategic plan, it means that you're much more agile in understanding what changes that need to be made before you actually need to make them. And again, this kind of goes back to modeling those alternative scenarios and then saying, okay, this is the one that we're going to pick as the strategic plan. Now I know what I'm supposed to be creating my bottom-up plan to meet. And, the technology that you need, so the bits and bytes of that is you need to be able to use, and again, Dave talked about this when he talked about the top-level assumptions, is you need to be able to both model those high-level drivers while still letting your business users do their own very granular bottom-up models as well. Step 5 is around sort of the how do we expose that data to the world, right? And I love this second bullet here where it says you can't control a process that you don't measure, right? It means that the intelligence piece of data needs to be shown, made visible through dashboards and scorecards. And that's not for everybody, of course. I'm a bit of a data hound, right? So I actually just like to see the raw data when I'm doing my modeling. But, there are other people for in-host analytics that just want to see their data in a dashboard. What it means, though, is the underlying data that I'm looking at and that somebody else is looking at in a dashboard needs to be consistent, right? It needs to be the same data, the same number, the same intersection of dimensions that everybody else in the company is looking at. You also need to test your assumptions, right? You need to put in your different assumptions and see how that manifests itself in the dashboard. And then adding that scorecard methodology and that scorecard information also makes the validation of those metrics much easier, and also the scorecarding process really helps with the collaboration because everybody knows how their particular piece is affecting the overall company KPIs. Step 6 is kind of sort of thinking outside our finance box, right? So just as we need to provide finance information out to the entire organization so they can make what we call fact-based decisions, we in finance also need to understand how the operational data side of your business affects the financial growth of your organization. So it means that we have to really not just provide a system so a line of business can use the system, but we need to really embrace that operational information in the overall financial plan as well. For example, I actually have a top-down programs plan that is driven off the number of new customers that we're going to sign up for the following 18 months. And that plan is driven by our sales team, both bottom-up and top-down. And so I can always look at how my top-down programs plan, my programs dollars are changing based on the number of new customers that Host Analytics will be signing next year. And that operational data is built into the overall financial plan. It's not just something that's separate to the financial plan. Stage 7 then is focusing on KPIs, so make sure, again, that your financial statements are not just finance statements, right? That they do include both leading and lagging indicators. So I meant your reporting contains both lagging and leading indicators. So when Dave was talking about his executive report process, he was talking about pulling in both P&Ls and balance sheets, but also graphs and headcount and capital data and other information maybe from outside of the organization, like external drivers that are really driving the business on an ongoing basis. Step 8 is really, again, kind of going back to this idea of all of the parts being linked. So we talked a little bit about execution being linked to the longer-term plan, and then we also have to close that loop by making sure that our scorecards are not just a reporting mechanism, right? They also need to help us with the planning process. So let's make sure that when we're looking at the strategic plan, that we do look at it in terms of a balanced scorecard, right? Again, that we're not just looking at the profit predictions of our company, but we're looking at all of the other elements of the scorecard as well. And then finally, and this is probably one of the most important, everybody in the company needs to be modeling scenarios, right? This is, again, not just the remit of finance folks. And by using a system that can be used by operational folks as well as finance folks, it means that everybody can do what-if scenarios. So I can actually go in to the planning process and look at, well, what actually happens to my overall dollars if the net new customer count does change. So I can kind of do my own what-if scenarios, anticipating what might change over the next 18 months. And it means that I can actually see my operational drivers really, I then understand both the risk and the return of flexing those variables and the effect that that has on the overall sort of profit or cost of my particular function. And those what-if scenarios have to be driven, right, by your top-down assumptions, your key measures, and your overall strategic plan. So that was just a really brief look. I think we're coming up to 15 past, John. So that was just a really brief look at some of the best practices that we've seen our customers implement by really looking at people, processes, and technology with a holistic view. So back over to you, John.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much, Carrie. We do have a polling question, which is one of these things that we do for the folks who are here getting CPE credit. If you are here for CPE credit, if you can just take a quick moment to answer this true-false question, it's simply to confirm that you're here and paying some sort of attention. For folks who are not here for CPE credit, you can ignore that. I will note, because I've had a couple of questions on this, slides will be available. They will be posted on our site typically within an hour or two after the webinar. We will also send out an email to all of the attendees that has a link to the soft copy. So you will be able to get the soft copy of this presentation. Also, I'd like to remind folks to please feel free to ask questions via the question panel in your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will do our best to get to them when we get to the Q&A. We are going to go ahead and introduce Dave Locksmith, who's a Senior Manager of FP&A at Planer Systems. Dave is responsible for worldwide financial planning and analysis at Planer. Before his current role, he was a controller for 2 business units at Planer. Dave also worked at Intel as a senior financial analyst in manufacturing. Prior to working in finance, Dave served as a captain in the U.S. Army. He has a BS in engineering from USC and an MBA from the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University, my favorite business school. Dave, why don't you go ahead and take us away?
All right, thank you, John. So we'll just talk a little bit about Planar and then kind of the process that we went through to greatly improve our planning and forecasting process. A quick look at Planar at a glance here. We make displays, mostly LCD displays, but we also have projection, front projection, rear projection, big and small, kind of all over the board there with displays. Been around for about 30 years, almost $200 million in revenue, and we're based here in Beaverton, Oregon, but we have sites all over the world as well. Our customer list is, pretty interesting as far as big, well-known names, and that kind of makes it fun to work here, even though we may not directly sell to them, where there may be an intermediary in between us. But it's fun to see our displays on, at some of these large customers. Some of our products is, you can see we do digital signage, which a good example there is in that bottom left-hand picture, where this is in a museum where they wanted to have a large video wall, and so we sell all the pieces for them to be able to put that together. But we also have displays for many other uses as well, from commercial to home theater to even stereoscopic 3D imaging. So what drove our initiative? For us, I've been at this company for 2 years at a time, and we had very difficult, poor access to financial information. A lot of that was from we had multiple ERP systems, multiple chart of accounts, and so as a result, it made it hard to even know what happened the last few months, let alone try to figure out how to plan what we were going to do going forward. So it was hard to let business managers really know what was driving their costs. It was also difficult even to ramp new finance team members because there was a large amount of tribal know-how to know where to go get data, what are all the pitfalls of the data, how to actually use it, and it's just not a very sustainable setup for our organization. We also wanted to provide more self-service reporting for business managers. It seemed like a lot of times the finances role was just to be able to give the data to them, and we want them to be able to do that themselves, and so we could have more time to do analysis and more value-added activities. And finally, we want to improve accountability and accuracy. And I think any time where business drivers are not known or we don't really understand the data and what's going on with the business, it basically makes the business managers be totally unaccountable for the results, because if we don't understand them, how can they be expected to improve them? So with all these reasons in hand, we decided, we came up with a list of what do we need for a solution to be able to fix our planning process. So we want something that was powerful as well. And I was a big proponent of something simple and straightforward, because our company, we're not the largest of companies, and there's a lot of amount of personnel turnover, and you can't have something that's very complex that once one person leaves, we won't be able to maintain anymore. We want something that people could easily learn and just to get up and running on it pretty quickly. We also wanted limited IT support. Our IT folks here are great, but it seems like any time you need something done with them, it takes 3 to 6 months or a year if you just want some changes. I want something that we could change in days and weeks and be able to do it ourselves. So that was an important feature as well. We wanted to get rid of all the spreadsheets. I know everyone's probably has at some point dealt with lots of spreadsheets and broken links and people messing with formats, and we just wanted to get rid of all that. And that was how we were doing all of our budgeting, is a monthly forecasting as well as the annual budget. And we were looking for something that had we want to build a full suite for the budgeting, forecasting, and reporting. It seems like we have a data warehouse for some of our actual reporting, but then the next thing you always want to compare it to your plan and to your forecast, and so we wanted to have something that would combine all that data in one place. And then we also want to improve reporting, and I'm more on the finance side, which we look a lot more at non-GAAP measures, but then our accountants wanted GAAP measures, and so we wanted to make sure we have the same data to use and be able to manipulate or report it in our own ways, but to make sure we're on the same page. No low capital investment, of course, in cost. Low cost is obviously a concern. And then data security is also important too, in that we want everyone to be able to share the same set of data, but not everyone to see necessarily everything. So we want to be able to control that with confidence. Real quick on our timeline, so we kind of identified the need back in March of 2010, made our list of requirements, looked at a lot of different options, signed up with Host in April, and then went through a process of mapping out the business structure and set up the system, got templates and reports templates sent to Host. They set them all up, and then basically by going down to the bottom there, by August we were ready to go with our annual budget. We did have some hiccups after that to get all of our historical results into the system, mostly because of our source data was pretty poor. But it gives you an idea at least of the timeline for us to get the budgeting up and running. So I guess what are some reasons why we chose Host? And I'm not trying to make a plug here completely for them. I think there's other good options out there, but for us, the Host met our needs. First and foremost, is just the simplicity of use. It's just the way that whole front, the interface, the application is just very easy. It's very easy to train people. It's easy to make major and minor changes without help, although we can call and get help from them if we need to. We feel like it's going to be very sustainable over the years, so when I move on to something else, I can move on to something else and someone else can continue to help run it. And the software as a service model, we like a lot. We used Salesforce.com already, and it definitely eased the burden on our IT department. We also wanted to obviously improve the planning process. Budget owners like it. They liked it when we did some demos, and they definitely liked it since that time. It's easy to get them going. We do very limited training for it. And then we also like that budget owners have access to all their HR data, so their people and salaries, as well as capital plans. And it's also easy for my finance team to manage. We have top-level assumptions, global changes to the input templates, pretty easy to update all those things, easy to review what people submit, easy to do comparisons to prior forecast budgets, historical trends. It just makes our work much more productive, and rather than just trying to roll up the numbers to get get a number. And then finally, they also have a financial consolidations module, and that was important for us too, because we wanted to get a one worldwide view of the data since we have multiple ERP systems. Other things that Host was good at, good on the customer support. So if you have any issues, you call and they answer the phone and fix your problems. They're definitely solely focused on the corporate performance management. What else? I think the simple implementation was also important to us too. We wanted something that we could do quickly. And then the reporting is also, another good reason that it was easy to learn how to do the reporting, easy to get what we need out of it. Okay, so other benefits. So benefits we've seen with our process, and I think as far as up to our CFO has seen from after we did this, we're much faster turnaround with the forecast with a much higher quality. Where before, you get questions like, well, what's your assumption on this or that, and you never could answer them. But now we really have a good handle on all the assumptions and all the underlying data that goes into the forecast, and being able to do that on a monthly basis and get the whole thing done in a few days is a huge improvement for us. We definitely reduce the manual efforts with the finance team, or I'll list on here. We're not at least not duplicating manual efforts, because we still have issues with our underlying data and how we get it into the system, but at least it makes us only one person has to do a lot of manual stuff once a month. And then on the reporting side, we have users that get the data themselves. They run their own reports. They can input their own forecasts, and I think they're very happy with that part. And then finance, we come alongside and help them do a better job of that and help do some analysis for them. But we're not needed just to do stuff they could do themselves. And so we focus more on data analysis versus data collection. And overall, we're seeing just higher data quality and less human error. One other feature too that we've added on since our initial implementation is it's called the Executive Report Manager, and I think Carrie has more on that. But basically, it's a way to create Microsoft Word books of combining data and commentary all in one place, and you can basically run as many reports as you want and basically combine into one package. And so we use this. We have two different packages we do on a monthly basis. One is a monthly financial summary of just the past month that was closed. So once accounting is done closing it, and we're obviously helping on that process as well, we can you push a button and it will run this 30-page book showing all our detailed revenue, margins, operating expenses, anything else we want to set up in there. And you'd have to go in and put in commentary of what to describe the data. But that's actually what people on my team spend their time doing now, instead of trying to go and collect and make charts and stuff. It's all already automatically done. So I think that's been a big win for us over the last few months, to be able to push data out to business owners. We also have another book that does, we have about 12 different product lines, and it does more detailed revenue and margin analysis and stuff. And so same thing, where we can put in just the commentary and you push a button and it spits the whole thing out. So it's been a big win for us. I've tried doing that kind of thing manually, and it's very difficult trying to get all the data to tie, and it's just something, this is light years better. So the last part I have on here is what I call my unplanned wins. So anytime you do some big IT implementation, you try to figure out everything you're going to need, and so you design it for that. But at least I find in the finance profession, things are always changing. People always want to look at data differently, or just do things differently. And so these are all new things that I came across and how I fixed them. One thing is we used to do a 2-quarter rolling forecast, and then I was told that we should need to move to 6 quarters. So our old method would just be lots of work to take all your Excel spreadsheets and add that much more time on them, and it would be very difficult and probably very inaccurate. But, with Host, we were able to do it relatively quickly. I think it took a week or so to get it all set up, And then since that time, we basically do a save as with each forecast so that budget owners go in and they see what they forecasted before, and they can just do their updates. And so it's pretty quick for each of them. Maybe it takes 20 minutes a month or something for them to update it. Another one we had to do was to start reporting our revenue at regional level by product, where before we mostly just looked at worldwide revenue by product. Our old method was to manually go get that history, to set up, change all our forecast files would have been very difficult. Instead, we had to change a few things, a few of the input templates for revenue in Host. So it probably took a few days or a week or two at most, and then create a new report, and I was able to meet that need as well. Another pretty simple one is some people in our company, like this from the sales side, we had India assigned with EMEA instead of being in Asia Pac, and so we wanted to change that to be standardized. And our old way would be to run a bunch of old reports and figure out how to do that. But in Host, there's just a regional hierarchy. We just made a quick 1-minute change, and we were able to change all that data. The next one would be we wanted just to split up the product line into new categories. Again, the old method would be just a tedious process of restating history and the forecast stuff. Instead, it was just a 10-minute change in Host to be able to get the reporting to show correctly. Another thing is we've been adding, I guess unlike a lot of companies, we've actually been hiring a little bit, and so we wanted to have better understanding of the headcount forecast. Before our old way, it was very hard to plan headcount, and at least to get reporting at the top level for everything that everyone's adding. But now we have all the detailed headcount reporting, as well as we have reports to show headcount trends by department or by function over time, over the whole forecast time period. Let's see here. One other thing I already kind of mentioned this for the executive report manager, that we needed to show 30 KPIs and incorporate operational, customer, and non-financial data. The old way, again, would have been very tedious with Excel. Instead, we're using the executive report manager to create all that. Another one that came up was that we have a manufacturing plant in Finland that we really pay attention to their build plan, and so we wanted to build that into our forecast more directly. Basically, we recreated their building plan spreadsheet into Host, and now they're able to load their build plan in directly, and we can get all that data at the top level reporting. And the next one is, we wanted to start, before we forecasted by quarter, then we want to start forecasting by month, even revenue. All we had to do for that is to make a little change to our input template for revenue that basically we put in a quarterly amount and it spreads it by month, and now we can get that out fairly easily. So last one is then we had a part and customer forecasting system that stopped working that would give us more of our SKU level, and what we did for that is now we're doing the next version of Host, which is the next module of Host, which is like a revenue plan, which allows you to do some customer and part level. So I think probably a little bit ad nauseum, but the point is that I found it to be very flexible, that whatever new needs we get, we're able to tailor the system to meet our needs. And I think that's it for my part.
Great. Thank you very much for that first-person perspective. So we're going to go ahead and ask our second and final poll question. Once again, this is for folks who want CPE credit. I've just opened that up. We'll do that for about 1 minute. I would ask that anyone who's not busy answering the poll question, if you have any questions at all for either Dave or Carrie, please feel free to drop them into the question area on your GoToWebinar control panel right now, and we will work on getting to those as soon as we're done with the poll. So I have a couple of questions here. I want to start with the first, which is, Dave, were you leading the process at your company to find this new budgeting and planning tool?
Yes, I was, yeah.
And it looks like you went from evaluation to selection pretty quickly, according to your timeline. What was the universe of solutions you looked at? Was it all SaaS or online? Did you look at on-premise tools, large versus small? What were your considerations for making those selections for your company?
Yeah, I mean, we probably looked at maybe 4 to 5 other vendors, got demos from them. I mean, I think there was, Host is the only all SaaS one, although a lot of them now have online portals. So you may install the software on, have IT manage that, but then the users will still go into using a web-based inputs. We looked at, we just looked at, trying to think of our criteria, how we came up with them. We looked at like the SAP solution because we already used their SAP Business Objects. We thought there might be some synergies there. We looked at a few other smaller, pure CPM-based ones as well. So yeah, we try to fast track the whole process, mostly because we knew the planning was coming up. Our fiscal year ends in October, so usually we're planning in the around August, September timeframe. So we had to go pretty quick, but we had a pretty small group of team on doing the selection as well.
Gotcha. And then it looks like it took about 4 to 5 months for you to get completely online. How much of that was technology adoption versus what proportion was process changes and data cleanup on your end?
Well, and that's not, the timeline actually was a little bit longer too. That was to get us onto the budgeting side. We had some of our own company-specific problems after that time as far as getting more actuals in there, the historicals in there. Our consolidations accountant quit, and they kind of had the keys to the kingdom and something. So my team kind of got thrown into the fire for a month or two trying to get all that data in there and do all the account mapping and stuff. I mean, the host data, the system worked as well as you can in that case. I think a lot of it, if you have really poor underlying data, it just takes a while to get that cleaned up. But I think, we spent a while probably on the host technology side as far as trying to set up how these input templates would work. And not so much the actual time to set them up doesn't take too long, but I think it's actually relatively easy. You end up redoing them a few times because, the host has set them up, and we thought, well, let's change them a little bit, so we'll kind of mess around with them. And we actually have continued to do that as well, which is actually kind of a nice part about the system is that you can change how people input data from month to month or any time. It doesn't mess up your historical forecast either. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I can come up with a whole way, exactly what happened during those first 5 months, but it's a little bit of everything, I guess. Some process change as well as some of the technology.
Gotcha. Kerry, in that same vein, what do you find a typical, quote-unquote, typical timeline to be for adopters of new budgeting and planning technology? And let's take a theoretical mid-sized company, so, sort of mid-sized complexity and depth in their finance and accounting processes, et cetera.
That's a great question. So there's a number of variables that sort of go into that I'll go through, before I answer that. And one is really the availability of the data that goes in, and Dave was talking a little bit about that. The other is how many business processes you're going to be implementing into the system. So are you just doing a consolidation and reporting implementation, or are you going for all of your finance process and your operational processes as well? So those are the kind of variables that go into that. On average, we see around 6 to 10 weeks is a typical implementation. The majority, all of that, of course, is actually implementing the application itself. There's no sort of hardware or software to get ready and load, because that's all covered by the host analytics data center. So it's typically between 6 to 10 weeks.
Okay, great, thank you. Kerry, you in your best practices presentation talked about metrics, visibility, creating visibility to metrics, creating the metrics, selecting the metrics, et cetera. How can companies go about testing assumptions around which metrics are key? In other words, how do you figure out what your key metrics are, and can the process, people, and technology help you figure that out? So
there's a couple of ways that you can go about that. you can, first of all, data analysis is key, right? Understanding what variables changed and how that affected your profitability. Now, of course, correlation doesn't always prove causation, right? We know that. But you can start to get, once you've got your data in a consistent format in an application, you can at least begin to see, begin to look at patterns over time. So that's the first thing that I do is, I look at data. I look at data a lot and just begin to kind of see the trends, right? The second thing is we actually do pull in, I talked a little bit about this before. One thing I would encourage all of you to start thinking about is bringing in external information into your financial process. So that could be external data like macro or microeconomic trends. But it could also be from folks like, for example, KPI Library, right? There's these sites that have a huge amount of information on what are the standard KPIs for the industries. And what we've done is kind of gone that step further and integrated your internal processes with that external data, whether that's Edgar information or KPI Library or just something as simple as exchange rates. So the first thing I do is look at data, see the patterns, see what is, see which dials are affecting your organization. I definitely do, some A/B testing, right? Looking at how, if you do turn the dials, what impact that has on profitability. And then begin to look at benchmarks and best practices outside of your organization to really start bringing in those best practices in-house.
Great. Dave, how involved were non-finance departments at your company in the adoption of the new planning platform? And actually, as a precursor to that, do you guys do bottoms-up forecasting, or is it mostly top-down?
We mostly do bottoms-up. And I'm trying. I think during the initial process, I don't think we got that much input from folks, mostly because we were going to try to, in some ways for the normal user, it was going to be a similar experience in the sense before we send them like an Excel template and they would, type in their numbers and we try to roll it all up. And we try to simulate that same kind of experience for them, except now they have more detail over their HR data as well as the capital. But I think, but now that we have it, I'd say it's a mixed bag as far as how involved some people are. I mean, some of our budget owners, especially like our R&D engineering managers, they love it. They love to be able to go in there and budget by their projects and to be able to see how they're doing compared to their annual budget. Some of my sales directors have less interest in it, so we have to kind of handhold them. But that is one nice thing about the system. If someone's less involved, but we still want to get their inputs, that we can kind of handhold them more and review with them offline or something. We could load that in for them. So it's been a little bit of a mixed bag on users, and I'm always trying to get more adoption of it as we go along.
Mm-hmm. Always a challenge getting those sales folks to pick up financial accounting stuff. Did you have any non-finance champions sort of in that process to help you spread it throughout the company, make it more successful? Was your CEO behind this? Were the VPs of the functional areas behind this? And how important was or was that not?
I really didn't, but I had I'd been at the company for a couple of years already, and I've already developed some pretty good working relationships with a lot of the key operational folks, and so I think I was able to bridge that gap, basically just through those relationships.
Mm-hmm. Great. Kara, I've had a number of people ask, at what size company does a solution like a host analytics, or we can probably say any truly dedicated CPM platform, make sense? 10 employees, 100 employees, 1,000 employees, where do you see practically folks starting to adopt this technology and seeing great success with it?
So I've seen anything from a $10 million company to a $5 billion company adopt a host analytics application approach. Having said that, the $10 million company had a lot of business complexities and was an incredibly high growth organization. So I think it does work for any type of organization. I would say if you're at that point where you can't accurately foresee how you can drive better business results, right, by using spreadsheets, you need to start looking at something before that system breaks, right? So if you can hear the creaks and feel that the glue's coming apart a little bit, then I would start looking for a packaged application. The size of the company size on the top end doesn't matter. It can be used, as I said, for $1 billion, $5 billion companies. What we have found is that those companies between about 50 million, where really the systems start to break, and $1 billion have been vastly underserved by the on-premise vendors in the past. So we've seen a lot of activity in that 50 million to $1 billion, but the outer limits are really not there. But we've seen most of our activity because it has been underserved in that area.
Gotcha. Dave, how do you guys pull your accounting and financial data into your budgeting and planning solution? Is it, first off, I've got a couple people asking, well, what do you use as an ERP system? Looks like you're a manufacturing company. And then is that fully automated, and how difficult was that that connection to make?
Yeah, well, we use an older Infor solution, and we're in the process of doing an ERP selection and upgrade process to hopefully improve and get some better underlying data. There's several options you can use. You can use a direct connect between the systems. For us, it just wasn't going to make sense because we have to do a little bit of manipulation for the data to make it more usable for us in host. So we basically do file uploads. So you can do file uploads, you can do copy-paste uploads. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to get the data in there, which I appreciate, because sometimes there's some operational data that we put in on a monthly basis that we just do it manually. It's just easier to copy-paste it in.
Gotcha. Kerry, what do you find clients typically doing? Are they creating an automated link or doing something more manual, or in between?
Again, it's a full range. We're actually seeing many more of our customers coming to us and using. We're actually packaging up connectors between our system and particular ERP systems. We're sort of knocking those off one by one, and people tend to like kind of those inbuilt, out-of-the-box connectors. There is, as Dave said, sometimes more transformation is required. That means that there might be a checkpoint in between the ERP and the trial balance and the host analytics system. But we're actually seeing more and more automation. We actually, by automating the integration between our ERP system, our CPM system, and our professional services automation system, we've cut our close and dispose process down from 10 days to 4 days on a monthly basis. And a lot of that comes from the automation of the integration.
Gotcha.
But I guess one thing I have to add to that is the one nice part about it is that you can always start with the manual loads and just get the data in there to get the implementation up and running. And then when it's all done and near the end of the project, then you could have your IT folks go in and do the actual connection. And so you don't have to wait to get the project going to have that whole, whole automatic connection in place.
That's a great point, Dave. That's a great point.
Yeah, plus that probably gives you some time to really pound on the system and make sure you're collecting everything you need before you have them hardwire it. So great suggestion. I hate to say it, we're just about out of time. We have a number of questions we didn't get to, but I will work with both Dave and Kerry to get these questions posted in the community on Performative, where they'll be available to all, like everything on Performative, and we'll look to get that done in the next day or two. So my apologies, but I want to be respectful for the time of everyone online here this morning. First off, thanks to Carrie Brooke and Dave Locksmith for their time and insight. Greatly appreciate that. If any of the listeners would like us to connect you with either of them, we will be sending out a survey, and in that survey we make it extremely easy. You just put a little check next to their name, and we're more than happy to connect you directly with them if you have any follow-up questions you would like to ask of them. That's also a notice that we will be sending out a survey. We appreciate your feedback. We'd like to know how to do this better the next time, and I will apologize once again for the little snafu we had on the phones earlier, but happily we were able to get all the information out today. If you have any questions about CPE credits, please send an email to Tanya Walsh, that's twalsh at performative.com. You can see her email address at the bottom here. It's also, I put it in the chat box for everyone to see. So any CPE questions, send them to Tanya. She will take care of you quickly. Once again, we'd really love to thank Host Analytics for allowing us to put on this event, providing us expertise and a customer to work with who's had a great background and experience in this space. And finally, I'd love to thank the audience for your time and attention this morning. Thank you so much. Hope everyone has a great remainder of the week. And with that, I will bid you all adieu. Final thanks to Carrie and Dave, and we look forward to seeing you all again either at our next event or online. Take care, everyone.